followed our path. Those who not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided that you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we couldn't find an easier, softer way, but we cannot. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. The result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps that we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, that came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought.
All right, thanks, Mike. The 7th tradition states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. If you don't carry cash on you, online fulfillment of the 7th tradition is available at treasuremapmeeting.com. If you do give online, please take one of the cards and place it in the basket as it's passed. I don't think we have any cards out right now, so I apologize for that. We thank you for your support. Your donations to the Treasure Map Meeting support all of our group's activities. In addition, they pay for our rent, our coffee, snacks, and literature. Plus, we happily support our local Sioux Falls Intergroup, South Dakota Regional District 5, Statewide Area 63, and the General Service Office supporting Alcoholics Anonymous around the world. Now, please help me welcome Craig to read the 12 traditions as we pass the basket.
Thank you. Craig Darby, alcoholic. Evidently, I'm the only one that was aware that it's name tag night. 12 traditions. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous, let me see. Yeah, there it is. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a whole, a great whole. A must continue to live, or must all of us be surely die. Hence our common welfare should come first. But individual welfare follows close afterwards. 2, for every group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. 3, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, hence that we may refuse none who wish to.
Keep finish and start over here on 4.
Nice.
It's gonna take you like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just following directions. Let's go with 3 again. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except when matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those that serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Craig. I pointed at the long form page, so if you want to read a 563 in your books, it's worth it. Okay, so now we've got announcements. So there's a lot of good stuff coming up here in the near future. We've got our Treasure Map 2nd anniversary celebration coming up in 3 weeks on February 13th, which is our normal meeting time. For the speakers, we're starting at 6 with a catered dinner, and the speakers are at 7 p.m. We've got Cliff and Lori G. From Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, that are going to be there on the 13th of February. So please join us. The Sioux Empire Roundup this year is March 13th, 14th, and 15th, which is right around the corner. They got a great lineup of speakers coming to town, so feel free to check out the flyer over there and pre-register. It's always a good idea to get that done. It's a little bit cheaper, and it gives them the ability to get a head count ahead of time. And then they've got the 12th anniversary Sioux City Tri-State Roundup. We are not a glum lot on March 6th, 7th, and 8th. Again, a great lineup of speakers, and I think there's probably going to be a caravan of treasure mappers going down to that. So if you want to ride or if you want to go, come find us at the break or after the meeting. That'd be great. And so tonight's meeting is an open speaker meeting, and our speakers tonight are Dennis for 15 minutes and Jeremy for 45 minutes. So please help me welcome Dennis.
Dennis, alcoholic. That's loud. I think my story starts out pretty simple. Had a good childhood, one sister. I don't remember ever wanting for anything. I don't think we were rich by any means, but I don't think we ever wanted for anything. And I guess I went along through life good. I know I was in high school before I ever had my first drink, and I think it was my buddy and I. That was when Coors used to just be available in Wyoming. So then we had gone, my family had gone to the Black Hills, I recall. So Dad, of course, went across the border to get some Coors so we could smuggle it back to Vermilion. So, and I remember my buddy and I down in the basement, you know, he had enough of it, so you wouldn't notice one little of those cans missing. So I think that's where we started, with one of those little cans. And that was probably our first taste of alcohol. And I don't remember hating it, don't remember loving it. But as life went on, I guess it got a little worse. Sophomore in high school, I think the first time that I was really out of it. It was spring break, and we used to have kegs at Clay County Park down in Vermilion. So some of the older kids would buy the keg, you'd go down, the sheriff would drive through. Who's in charge? Clean up the mess when you're done. No one ever got put in jail, and nowhere ever got arrested for DWI. People always hauled people home. So that went on for throughout my high school career, I guess. We usually partied on the weekends. We never partied during the week. I don't remember that ever being, because nobody was having a keg or anything. And if nobody was having a party, you drove up and down Main Street drinking beer in your car. And you always knew, I mean, in small towns, you always had somebody that buy it for you. And once you got old enough, you could be 17 and you go into RDs and he'd sell to you right over the bar. So we never had a problem getting alcohol. I never really thought anything of it. Never thought I had a problem back then because I never drank during the week and even on the weekend. I never had a curfew growing up, but if you came home late, we had a wood-burning stove at our house. So if you came home late Saturday morning, we went and started cutting wood early. Nothing like the roar of a chainsaw to go with your hangover. So I did my drinking, was very careful. Made sure I quit before it got too late and make sure I always got home on time because I didn't want the inevitable of sawing wood in the morning. And the first real time I think that I got in trouble was it was my senior year, and it was, I think, Christmas break. We had 4 of us, and we had a big bottle of vodka and a big bottle of whiskey. And we knew the gal that worked down at the theater, so we went down and got those big 32-ounce Cokes that they used to have that you'd stick the straw on the side, you could open it up like a milk carton. And so we got those. And we went through the whiskey, and then we decided we needed some sour, so we went to the local grocery store, Tom and Bud's, to get some sour to go with our vodka. Vodka sour, right? Made sense. So inevitably, somehow we ended up at Grandpa's Disco, which is now a real estate office in Vermillion if you get down there. But it was Grandpa's Disco. And I remember sitting there on the floor as the lights were flashing and the room was spinning. And I was drinking to be sick. So I got up and left and went outside and got sick. Then I knew I couldn't go back in. So what I remember of the evening was trying to go to my sister's apartment. That was about 3 blocks away. She was in college. Beat on the door, no one there. So I ended up walking about 2 miles home. Remember having my hands in my pocket, falling off the curb and skidding my chin. So then finally made it home. And I remember I was downstairs throwing up in the toilet. And my mom came down, and I managed to get out to the kitchen, was leaning up against the counter. And she, "Are you all right?" And I'm, "Oh, yeah, I'm all right." And I had apparently blood on my jacket, I'm sure, from my chin bleeding. So then the next morning I did not have to go out and cut wood. But my mom did make me some really nice runny eggs that I sat there and ate and then went and got sick. So those things stick in my mind, I guess, the most of where the trouble started. I was lucky I made it home alive because I remember the people that, well, I guess let's back up. What prompted my mother to come downstairs was one of my friends had called my house to see if I'd made it home. So I did have a good friend there, and I had. So then I swore off drinking, and I wasn't gonna drink. So I think I made it. That was about Christmas break. So I think I made it almost to April of my senior year before I took up drinking again. And then I was not going to drink the hard stuff, let me tell you, because that was bad news. So I took up beer drinking, and since that day, I think the only thing I've ever drank is beer. Kind of got off the hard stuff after that little excursion. And I went along in life, went to college, was freshman in college, started dating a senior in high school. And next thing I knew, I had a pregnant girlfriend. So my son was born in April of '82, and we got married in June. We're still married, by the way. So, and I have 3 children now. So things went along good, and we drank together. And as we were in when she was in high school, I guess I was in college. Drank after we got married. We drank, but never out of control. Never out of control. Went along. Occasionally, we went to Johnny Home Band, I believe, on New Year's a couple of times, and I think that was about the extent of heavy drinking. And then as my kids got older, I know when they were in middle school, went through a phase where I say probably didn't drink for almost 15 years. And then after my kids got older, it's like, well, the kids are gone now. So I started having beers again, and things went along fine. Never had a problem. Didn't think I did, but I guess I always did have a problem. Had a little higher stress job, which I was on the road, drove about 70,000 miles a year. Never drank when I was on the road, but I had a habit of coming home. I had about an hour and a half paperwork to do every night. So then every night I'd at least have a 6-pack. But I wasn't, I was at home, safe and sound, and wasn't obnoxiously drunk. But that went on, for almost 11 years, I guess. I was in that business. And then I had the opportunity to start my own business. So I started my own business. And I got into that, and in that I did really well the first 6 years. Didn't drink. I mean, I never drank during the day. Would drink at night some, but nothing, not the 6-pack, even like when I'd been on the road. And then about 2.5 years ago, I got this thing called anxiety. So they tell me I probably had it all my life, but it manifested itself. So I decided that I found a really good treatment for anxiety. I found out that when I started drinking at night after I got home done at the end of the day. I was like, oh man, I sleep good too. That really worked well. So then that went on, I would say for about 6 to 8 months. So then it got where it's like, I got to about midday and I'm like, God, I'm really just overwhelmed today. I could really use a beer. So then I started drinking about noon. What used to be 1 6-pack now was a 12-pack, it seemed like, almost daily. Occasionally, if something was going on the weekend, it seemed like I drank less on the weekend now because I didn't have the opportunity. My wife was around. When where she wasn't, she worked, still does. So that went about a year, I'd say, until I've been sober 9 months at the end of this month. So it's probably a year and a half ago, it got where I started drinking in the morning. She left for work at 6:30, gas station 2 blocks away, 7 o'clock, you can start my beer, my friends. And I'd always start with I was just going to have a 6-pack of Tall Boys. That was all I was going to have. Well, I drank one on the way home usually. Before I left the house, showered, left the house, I'd had 2 more. So by the time noon rolled around, I'd had all that 6-pack. So then, I got to go home and let the dog out. So I'd stop by the gas station and get another 6-pack of Tall Boys. So eventually it got where that was happening every day. I was working less and less. And when you work for yourself, that doesn't work out very well. So my wife she started to notice, obviously. She said, I never know what you're going to come home to. And I just would say, I'm just exhausted. And of course, I wasn't exhausted, passed out. Fell asleep every night, quote unquote. I had passed out every night. So that went on, like I said, about a year now. About a year of really heavy drinking. And I would black out every night, basically. We'd have conversations. She'd ask me in the morning about something, and I'd say, gosh, I don't remember that. We talked about it last night. I had no idea we talked about it. So it came to I quit on a Friday, April 27th. All my family was home, and I knew they were coming home. And I had just a regular day, so about 5 o'clock when I showed up, I was a little under the weather, so to speak. So I managed to embarrass myself bad enough that I decided to do something about it. And that's when I went into treatment. And I was lucky enough to do outpatient treatment. And it stuck for me so far. I'm going to do my 5th step next week. So I'm on the way, and I thank God every day for this organization and for his help in guiding me through this mess that I created for myself. I don't know if I did 15 minutes, but that's the first time I've ever done this. So maybe my story will get longer and better every time. Thank you.
All right, thank Thanks, Dennis. Good job. You owe us 6 minutes next time. No, I'm kidding. Great job. We'll take about a 10-minute break and come back. Thanks, guys.
All right, we're out. Little bit complicated. That's nerve-wracking. Kind of like you. Try to remember. Life went on for a long time. That was Any friends started that career? I think it's like really bad. Lay low for a while and stuff. By the grace of God, got separated and stuff. I started getting it. I still, I did it. I got to get up on the weekend. I was like, I just it was like the floor. Yeah, stuff like that. During the week, I still was. One time, towards the end, it was real close to the end. Because that was like, that was 13 years ago when I got divorced. One time towards the end, I went there, I got the chance to fight, and I I started driving to work, and I worked in At one time, I drank on the way up there. I worked. I went out for lunch. I went to the bathroom. And worked during that. That is the one time. That's the I feel so I can tell. Every hour you get out. It's like a lot so I mean, what terrible time you drink? All the time you drink. After 11 o'clock. So that's I did bigger town, bigger town.
I remember that. I was frightened what was happening, but I didn't. I know you are. Yeah, I Yes, not far. But my dad actually stopped. He just stopped. He never he woke up about 6. He was like, he just stopped. And it hasn't come back. Yeah, so far. My dad's deal was my dad was so I know things are different. I was I never know when that's going to not go well. No, and I'm thinking about the time you're writing cards. Yeah. You know, bypass, you know the bypass? Yeah. We used to go out the bypass, and then we'd go down there and drink. And then you can drive off that way and come out on front. So we'd go up the curb and then we'd go over the side and down the hill. Never roll. We'd go down there and drink a case of beer before us. And then I got him drunk on a boat. Like I said, my dad better get called from you before I can draw your blood. And still we used to do Trying to get him, but they can still do it. Yeah, there's a 4-year-old. That's kind of, to me, that's. So I mean, that's thinking about the power that.
My wife was working in the school system. So she told me stories of the kids. Some of the schools don't lack of support from the actual school itself. There was a kid who was 2 weeks in a row, and he was going to kill himself. And she told the counselor, and the counselor was like, oh, I saw my sister. Jack, that kid had just the best right now. But had he so parents stop Sure. Sorry about that.
Now, okay. No, I'm just astounded.
And I.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Please help me welcome Jeremy from Watertown.
My name is Jeremy McBurney. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. And because of the grace of God and because of sponsorship, because of a home group and actions that I've taken that are outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had to take a drink or anything else since September 25th, 2005. And so I'm very grateful for that. I was going to say thanks to Mike for inviting me, but he's in the men's room right now. So we'll thank him when he comes out. But I want to say thank you to the group for allowing me the opportunity to come down and share my story with you. I always think it's a privilege to be able to get asked to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I usually try to say yes, provided I can make it work in my schedule. So thank you to Dennis, too, for your story. I would have never known it was your first time telling it. It was great. You had me on pins and needles. I was waiting to see what happened at the end, and the cool part was you got sober at the end, which is kind of cool when you get to listen to stories in Alcoholics Anonymous. They usually end with and then I got sober, but the getting there part is always sort of the fascinating part. So I I like to listen to stories more than I like to tell my own. But yeah, I'm glad to be here tonight, and I'm glad to get the opportunity to share with you my experience, strength, and hope. I also want to say thank you to this Mike. He's a guy that I just started sponsoring maybe 3 weeks ago, and he was good enough to ride down here with me tonight. So the roads are a little rough, so it was nice to have some company and get to know each other a little bit better. And it'll be nice to have some company on the way home. And I'm just going to apologize in advance if we wind up in the ditch. But I brought boots and a heavy coat, so I'll wear the boots and the heavy coat, and you can suffer through. So anyway, my job tonight is to share with you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. So I will do that. I was born in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and usually what I say is if you've never been there, I don't recommend going. It's a town about 2.5 hours northeast of here, and for a long time, if you'd asked me, I'd have told you, well, that was my problem. I grew up in this goofy little town, and there just wasn't anything going on, and I was kind of misunderstood, and maybe just a little bit too cool for these people, and so they just didn't get me, and really, I've had opportunities since I've been sober to be able to go back home and spend some time in sobriety in that town. And what I discovered is there was nothing wrong with the town at all. There was just something with the idiot that was growing up there, and that was me. And that's really probably the best way to start out telling you my story, is to just tell you that from my earliest conscious memories, I just didn't feel okay. I just felt different. We talk an awful lot in Alcoholics Anonymous about comparing insides to outsides, and I identify with that. I always have this capability to look at you and to just know that you feel better than I do, and to know that your life is going better than my life, and to know that people like you more than they like me, and to know that whatever secret there is to life, you found it, and I didn't get it, like I missed it, and so for as far back as I can go, that's what I remember. I just remember feeling different. I remember feeling not a part of. There's a story I tell an awful lot about my first day in kindergarten. I showed up to kindergarten with my little crew of daycare kids, and a few days or a few months before going to actual school, a few of us had to walk over with our daycare lady to kindergarten. And as we were walking over there, this kid who was a third grader came out of the bushes riding his bike, and he hit one of the girls that we were walking with, and he hit her, and he tore a big gash in her leg. And I watched that happen, and I just became instantly filled with fear. And I thought to myself, like, I'm going to have to bump into this guy eventually at school, and he's going to see me, and he's going to do the same thing to me that he did to that girl. He's going to hurt me really badly. And so every day at age 5, showing up to kindergarten, I would get there, and all my little friends would run off and play on the playground, and I would stand. There was a line that we weren't supposed to cross where the door was, and I would stand right at that line, like right at the edge, and I would just pray that God would make the bell ring faster than he ever made it ring before, so that the bully wouldn't see me and come beat me up. And so even at age 5, irrational fear was already preventing me from being able to interact with other people. And in addition to irrational fear was what I already described, was just this feeling of just not fitting. And so I grew up, I got a little bit older, and these feelings that I'm describing didn't go away. If anything, I think they intensified. And I think, I don't know because I've never been normal, but I think that teenage years are pretty awkward for everybody. That's what normal people have reported to me. I was lucky enough to marry a gal who doesn't have the illness that I have, and she talks about her teenage years being kind of awkward and not so fun either. But for me, that was when it really started to just kind of take off, and just like everything that I've already described was just like worse. Like I would show up to school every day and just know that I didn't fit, and know that people didn't want to talk to me. I was about 14 years old, and I was sitting at my lunch table with my little group of friends, and I looked around, and I kind of took an inventory of all of us, and we all had commonalities. We had zits, and most of our voices hadn't changed yet, and we were all really into Star Trek, and we all got really good grades. And I took a look at these guys, and I thought to myself, I'm like, I know what my problem is. Like, I'm not cool, And then I looked over here, and there was another lunch table over here full of guys that were cool. They were just cool. Now, they didn't have shirts on that said we're cool. They didn't there was nothing about them that outwardly said it. They were just the cool guys. They were the guys that everybody kind of wanted to be like. And I'm not a stupid kid, so I said to myself, well, I know if I just can do whatever it is they're doing, like if I can just become like them, then whatever I'm feeling inside is going to change. And if I can match outside what I feel like inside, I'm going to be okay. So just like overnight, I sold out. I'm a product of the late 80s and early 90s as far as like DARE and the Just Say No program. I was elementary and junior high school during that era. And so we'd have cops come to school and they'd have this like case of fake drugs. And they'd say, if you take this, like this, it'll do this to you, so don't do that. And if you put this in your system, it'll do this, so don't do that. And I was a rule follower. Like I was a good kid, right? So I was like, yeah, okay, like I'm not going to do that. Like, you have proven to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that drugs are bad. I won't do it. And so I had pretty firm convictions, pretty firm resolutions by that age, by age 14. I looked over here at this group of guys, and I decided that what was wrong with me was that I wasn't cool, and I decided that I wanted to become like them in order to feel okay inside. And what they were doing is they were drinking and using drugs, and so just like that, I sold out. Like any conviction that I had, any sort of like ability to have any sort of conviction was just gone. Just like that, I sold out. And overnight I started doing what those guys were doing. And what happened for me was all of a sudden I had this new identity, right? Like if you start rolling with that crew, pretty quickly you can change who you are. And so I started rolling with this crew and started doing what it was they were doing. And outwardly now on paper, right? Like if you looked at me, you're like, well, no, he's one of the cool guys because he's hanging out with the other guys that are cool. But inside I still felt different, and I had opportunity to have my hands on some of these illicit substances and to do some of this stuff. And really for me, all that did was something to me. The things that we were doing at that young age, they just got me loaded. I come here as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I identify as an alcoholic not because I didn't have my occasion to do a lot of that other stuff. It was just because that stuff that we were doing back then, the drugs that we were doing, they did something to me. When I put certain things into my system, it was like, oh, if I smoke this, I get tired and hungry and paranoid. And if I put this on my nose, I have a tendency to stay awake for an extended period of time. And if I put this in on my tongue, the walls start to melt. But that was about the extent of the experience that I had with drugs. Like they didn't do for me what it was I was looking for. The only thing they did was for a little while change how I felt, and then they gave me this new identity. So now I've got this new identity. I'm doing this stuff that I said I wasn't going to be doing. So now I'm insanely conflicted, and I still don't feel okay. Right? Like I sought out this new way of life, found it, and I still don't feel okay. And now we've got a real problem. So one night when I was about 15 years old, I'm hanging out with this, crew of kids that I found myself with, and we're at this party, and I don't have any of the usual stuff that I would carry around with me to like my entry fee to get in the door, right? And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm feeling just like I did when I was 5 years old, right? Like I don't want to cross the line in the playground. I don't want to get up and talk to my buddies because I don't know what to say to them. I'm afraid that something bad might happen. There's girls there. I don't want to talk to them, and I'm just not feeling okay. And the only thing that was at this party that night was some beer, right? And in spite of my suddenly being okay with doing illegal substances, I still kind of had this firm conviction that I wasn't going to drink. If you didn't hear me at the beginning, I said my last name was McBurney, which is Irish. And my people seem to have a little bit of a problem with alcohol. And so I, and my family, experienced that just like a lot of people did. I watched people in my family drink, and I watched them have bad consequences as a result of it. So in spite of my being okay with in spite of me being okay with suddenly using drugs, for some reason booze was just kind of that line I wasn't going to cross, right? Like I still had this flag in the ground of like, I'm not going to drink. And so this particular night I'm at this party, and the only thing that's there is some beer. And so not knowing anything better to do, I grabbed a beer and I twisted off the top and I choked it back and tasted awful. Almost threw it up. So naturally I grabbed another one, and I twisted off the top and I choked it back and it tasted awful. So grabbed a third beer and I twisted off the top and I choked that one back, and something happened. Something happened. And what I know today happened was that I got an effect produced by alcohol that doesn't occur in most people. The best way I can describe it is, I was a pretty ugly kid. I should probably set the scene for it. I was a pretty ugly kid. I'm 15 years old, and I got this peach fuzz thing that I thought was a real beard that I would grow out really long. I had zits that covered my face, and I had these glasses that I wore that kind of looked like John Lennon glasses, because although it was the 90s, I was trying to kind of recapture the 60s. And I had this long ratty hair that I grew out, and my hair's not designed to grow long, so like one side would swoop out like this, and the other side would swoop in like this. And on any given day, you could find me wearing either a Marilyn Manson shirt or a Grateful Dead shirt. And I don't know if you guys know anything about those two bands, but you kind of have to like one or the other, you know what I mean? And so this particular night, I think I was probably wearing a Marilyn Manson shirt, and I'm halfway through that third beer, and I got this effect. And what happened for me was I was able to get up off that couch, and for the first time in my life, I felt okay. You know, it was like the zits fell off, peach fuzz turned into a real beard, my hair became beautiful blonde flowing locks. And the first time in my life, I knew how to interact with everybody. Like I just knew. It was like this thing that had been just kind of waiting inside of me forever, and then these 2.5 beers like unlocked it. This magical key, right? So all of a sudden I'm out and I'm talking to my buddies and I'm flirting with the girls, and I'm not worried about what you're thinking about me. I'm not afraid of what happened or what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not concerned with anything that happened yesterday. There's just this whole like eye-opening, like amazing experience as a result of 2.5 Budweisers. And I, for the first time ever, I understood why people in my life drank. Right? I told you I had a lot of family members who drank, and up until that point, I would have told you like they're idiots, you know. And that night it just became clear to me. I understood why they would do that to themselves, why they would sacrifice their reputation and sometimes their freedom and all this other stuff. It made sense, because if that's what 2.5 Budweisers can do, man, I was going to do that as often as I possibly could. Like I felt okay. And so I just set out to recapture that feeling as often as I possibly could. I didn't set out to become an alcoholic. I didn't set out to go to jail or treatment or halfway house or, you know, destroy family relationships or hurt people that didn't deserve to be hurt or take things that weren't mine or anything like that. Like I just set out to recapture that feeling. And I think what's true about that today is that, you know, I suffer from a pretty severe case of self-centeredness. You know, Mike and I were talking about that on the way home, right? So how I feel has always been like the highest concern for me. You know, if I don't feel okay, if I don't feel like I fit, if I'm feeling uncomfortable about anything whatsoever, I'll do anything in my power to change that. Now, when I was drinking, it was incredibly convenient because all I had to do was pop open a couple beers and tip them back, and pretty soon that would just kind of wash over me, and I would no longer feel this distress or dis-ease, right? But even in sobriety, you know, I haven't had a drink in a long, long time, and even in sobriety, I can still find myself when I'm in a situation that I don't feel comfortable in. You know, it's rare that the first thought that occurs to me is maybe I can do something to make somebody else feel comfortable. You know, it's always about how can I escape this uncomfortable feeling and get right with myself in here. But at the time at age 15, feeling that way, I had no idea what it meant to be self-centered. All I knew was that when I was not drinking, I didn't feel okay, and 2.5 Budweisers seemed to make me feel fine. So I set out to recapture that feeling as often as I possibly could. And so I went out just with the intention of feeling okay. And alcohol for me was just kind of a thing that when I put it into my system, it always worked. All that other stuff I told you about, it may or may not work. It may or may not have even been real. I don't know. But the others, when I put booze into my system, it went deep down inside of me, and it just kind of made me go, which is all I was ever looking for. So if you spend enough time intoxicated under the age of 21 in a town the size of Aberdeen, you'll get caught, or at least I did. And after about my 9th or 10th underage drinking charge, I stood in front of a judge and he said, you know, Mr. McBurney, it's become pretty apparent that you have a problem with alcohol. And I remember thinking, well, no, I just really have a problem with cops. But what kicked in right behind that was really the first time that anybody had said to me, you know, maybe you've got a problem with alcohol. Maybe you need to take a look at your drinking. And what kicked in right behind that was just sort of this, I don't know how to explain it, just this feeling of like, wow, like this guy doesn't understand. You know, booze isn't the problem, right? Like I understand problems arise when I drink, but I don't think that's the problem. And for me, you know, the problem is life. Right? Like the problem is just kind of this level of disappointment that I've always had in the human race. You know, the problem is that I don't know how to string a sentence together in a group full of people, and I'm 17 years old, and I should know that by now. The problem is everybody around me seems to kind of look like they've got everything figured out, and I don't know. I know nothing. You know, the problem is I've always just kind of had this feeling of just like sadness. You know, just this overwhelming feeling of just like the problem is, you know, I could have gone on, right? Like I could, but that was the problem. Booze for me was the solution. That was the thing that I found that kind of made all that go away. That didn't make me focus so much on how I felt. It made me focus more on just being there, you know. So I didn't say all that to the judge that day. I just kind of nodded my head and said, "You're right, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I'll try harder." But that was the first time that anybody had presented me with the notion that alcohol might be the problem, and also the first time where I looked at it and thought, "This may not be a problem. I think this might be the solution. Like this might be the thing that's going to get me through," you know. And so, at the risk of spending too much time talking about my drinking, I'll try to kind of shorten that up a little bit. What I'll just tell you is that by the time I was 21, with the solution in mind that I'd found, I'd gone from being kind of a goofy, happy, funny drunk to a belligerent, violent, blackout drinker. I'd drank myself out of college several times. I'd gotten to the point where I was just basically unemployable. You know, I had jobs from time to time, but I would kind of show up and work there just long enough to collect a paycheck, and then I'd leave. And I had one job. I think last time I had to talk and tell the story too. It's kind of funny. So I had this job as a cook at a restaurant in Aberdeen, and like this was the level of like self-centeredness that I lived in, and just like the level of delusion that I lived in. So I would show up and I would work for a period of time, and I would get paid, and I would just quit, right? Like I would quit because I'd have money, and I'd go drink it up, and I wouldn't call and say like, "Hey, I'm quitting," or like I wouldn't even call and say, like, I would just stop showing up at this job. And then 2 weeks might go by, 3 weeks might go by, and then I would just show up again. And like, I'll never forget, I just walked in one day, and my boss looked at me and he goes, "What, do you work here again now?" And I was like, "Well, yeah," like, you know, and that was just the persona that I am. Like, yeah, like I work here. And so yeah, so I couldn't really hold a job, couldn't stay in school. I was starting to hurt people that I loved, and I was starting to get locked up pretty regularly in the Brown County Jail back in Aberdeen. And most of the time, they weren't locking me up because I was committing crimes. They were locking me up because we don't have a long-term detox center, and so I would spend extended periods of time under the influence of alcohol, and my mother would become concerned, and she had a job working for the court system in Aberdeen, so she would file what's called an involuntary committal on me, and so they would send some sheriffs over to determine if I'd been drinking too much, and usually with some papers that I would have to sign, and they would take me to jail and keep me there until I would dry out, and then after drying out, I'd wind up in treatment. So I'm 21 years old at this point. I'm starting to go to treatment pretty regularly, and there's probably some people from Tallgrass here tonight. I hope you guys know how good you have it, because treatment for me was always at the State Mental Hospital in Yankton, South Dakota. So regardless of how bad you might think it is where you're at right now, I just want to assure you that it is even worse at the Human Services Agency in Yankton, South Dakota. But they would send me to treatment, and here's how I operate in a scenario like that. Treatment to me seems an awful lot like a classroom setting, right? Like it's kind of like an academic type thing. So they put me in there, and you have 12 steps over here, 12 traditions over here. They give you a stack of literature. They have classes all day long, and in spite of all the stuff that I'm not good at, the one thing that I seem to always kind of do okay with is academics, right? So they'd sit me in treatment, and I would memorize the steps, memorize traditions. I'd go into my room, and I would read large passages of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and commit them to memory. And then I'd be that guy that was sitting there reciting the Big Book, you know. And so then the counselors would be like, "You gotta like hang out with Jeremy. He's the guy that's gonna make it when he gets out, you know." And then right as I was about to leave, they would leave me with this final piece of information. They say, "Well, when you leave here, go to meetings, get a sponsor, and work the 12 steps." And I'd say, "Well, I don't want to rush into anything here. You know what I mean? I just kind of want to, I got my head full of knowledge about my condition." Let me rephrase, I have my head full of knowledge about a condition because I don't know that I'm an alcoholic just yet, right? But you've driven me out for 30 days. I've had some mediocre hospital food, gained some weight. I'm going to go home. I'm going to put my life together. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a girlfriend. I'm going to get, a carton of cigarettes, and life's going to be good, you know? And so when I would get out, maybe I'd go to a meeting or two. Maybe I'd ask somebody kind of half-heartedly to be my sponsor. But then I would just sort of take after trying to put my own life together, you know? Like, let me just kind of see what I can do to manage this. Let me see how I can utilize this amazing intellect that God has given me, which after being sober for 14 years, I realized there's no such thing for me as an amazing intellect. I'm lucky if I can, read half a page of news, right? But when I was brand new in recovery, if you had asked me that, I told you that I knew everything there was to know about everything, right? So let me just put all that to work. You know, and I'd get out and I'd go home, and I would have this firm resolution that I wasn't going to drink, you know, just this firm resolution, because I've got 30 days of treatment behind me. I've got large passages of this Big Book memorized. I've got a knowledge of a condition, and I've got evidence. I've got a stack of evidence this high that it's a bad idea for a guy like me to take a drink. So I'm going to go home and not drink, you know. and a week would go by and I'd be not drinking. Maybe I'd get a job, and another week would go by and I'd be still not drinking, and maybe like not as enthusiastic as I was from the first week of getting out of treatment, but just like, okay, like this is tolerable. I can do this. And then a third week would go by and I'd be like, God, this is kind of boring, but like maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll get a girlfriend, and so then I go seek that out. And then another week would go by and I'd be, well, maybe I should just subscribe to HBO. I sobered up in 2005, right? So like 2003 to 2005 was like the age of The Sopranos, right? So I'm like, I'm just going to subscribe to HBO and like watch The Sopranos, because that'll definitely cure whatever's chirping in here. And then all of a sudden this thing would come back and it would say stuff like, I know we said that we were done drinking. And I always say this too, I don't know who we are, but it would say, I know we said that we were done drinking. In fact, I've asked my wife that. We've established that she's normal. I said, do you ever like refer to yourself in the third person? She says, no. And she seems concerned when I ask her that, you know what I mean? So I know we said we were done drinking, but last time we were drinking, it was, we were drinking whiskey, and we were drinking on Tuesday nights, and we said we weren't going to drink during the week anymore. And we were drinking with those guys, and every time we drink with those guys, like chaos ensues, and we were drinking on an empty stomach. And so I know we said we were done drinking, but maybe what it meant was we're done drinking whiskey on Tuesday nights on an empty stomach with those guys. It's Friday night. I'll eat a full meal. I'll turn my cell phone off so that I can't even call those guys. I'll hide it from myself, as a matter of fact. And, I got a 12-pack of beer, and I'm just going to have one. I'll just have one, maybe two. What could go wrong, right? And then my head had done its job. My mind had done its job. I would grab a beer, and I would twist off the top, and I would take that first drink, and then I would just be drinking to overcome a craving that I absolutely cannot overcome, because I suffer from an allergy of the body. I have this thing inside of me that when I put booze into my system, I absolutely can't stop taking that next drink. So I've got this mind that keeps telling me, in spite of all this evidence, that this time is going to be different. If I just change some variable, if I just tweak one thing here or there, this time it's going to be different. So I've got this mind that tells me this, and then I believe it. Like, I buy the lie. It might take me a week, it might take me 4 weeks, but eventually I'm going to buy the lie again. And I have this body that the minute I put alcohol into it, it can't seem to stop drinking. And then I've got that feeling that I already described to you, just feeling different, of feeling afraid, of feeling anxious, feeling all these things all the time. So I've just got this thing. I can't stop drinking. I can't stop thinking about drinking, and I can't stop feeling bad. And so that was the persona that would come out of treatment. And my second time out of treatment, I got home and I was living in this apartment that my mom was paying the rent for. And somehow or another, I'd done it on purpose. I acquired a bunch of AA literature, because I figured if I had all this AA literature and I read it and I learned what there was to learn about Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd be able to figure out how to stay sober on my own without having to go to these stupid meetings, without having to have a stupid sponsor, without having to do the stupid steps and all the other stupid stuff, right? And so I'm sitting at home and I'm reading Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And it's important to note at this point in my recovery, or not recovery, at this point in my life, I was 22 years old, I had no belief in God and no use for him. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading this book, and not all it talks about, but there's a significant portion of that book that talks about how in the old days, Dr. Bob would take newcomers up into his upper room, his attic, and he would pray with them until he was convinced that they turned their will and their life over to the care of God. Right? And so they were like hardcore with this God stuff. And I was like, it just seemed a little bit weird to me, but for some reason that just really stuck out to me. They really genuinely believed in a power greater than themselves. And the recovery rate back then was substantial. I mean, there's all kinds of varying figures now. I don't really know what the actual recovery rate is. I would say probably pretty close to 100% if you actually come into Alcoholics Anonymous, get a sponsor, and work the steps. I don't know. But back then they were having, just this great success of getting all these people sober. So I'm reading this, and it was like 4 a.m. I was out of booze, I was out of money, and I'm reading this part of the book. And for some reason, I did something that was completely foreign to my nature at that point. I got down on my knees and I said a prayer, and I hadn't prayed in a long time. The prayer was something similar to this. It was, I don't know if you're there, and I don't know if you're not, but I hope you are, because if not, I think I might be screwed, And that was it. It wasn't my best prayer, it wasn't my longest, wasn't my most articulate, but I was able to get up off my knees at 4 a.m, and for some reason it was just like this weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew I didn't need to drink anymore. I also knew that I should go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, this was February of 2004. If you were paying attention, I told you my sobriety date September of 2005. So I haven't been sober from that day to this one. But what I can tell you is I can look back in my life and I can tell you that there was something changed that night. Me saying that prayer, me asking for help, I can trace a path from that night to this one. And you don't go from where I was that night to where I'm at tonight without something changing. And the only thing that I can say that changed was I suddenly had this, I don't know if it was an overwhelming belief, but I suddenly had this thought that maybe there was something bigger than me. Maybe there was something bigger than me. And maybe more importantly, whatever it was that was bigger than me, maybe that could help me. So I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Still wasn't wanting to rush into anything. Didn't get a sponsor. Didn't start working the steps. We have a few suggestions in AA, like don't get into relationships for a year. I figured 3 months is okay. Had a gal who was fresh out of the state mental hospital, just like me. So I said, why don't you move in? And so she moved in, and this may be shocking to you guys, but the relationship didn't work out. And more importantly than that, I mean, that's a whole other story in and of by itself. But more importantly than that, me not drinking, but me not doing something to recover is just, it's not a good scene, because this thing just keeps going. And like initially, I had this spark, like I had this, pink cloud or whatever you want to call it. But then I didn't follow it up with any action. So 4 months go by, 5 months go by, and this thing's getting worse and worse and worse until one night I just couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't take the pressure. I couldn't take the not feeling okay. I couldn't take one more argument with this girlfriend. And I went out and I just had a beer. And it was just going to be one beer, and in rapid succession. She was gone. I was working 2 jobs at the time. Those were gone. I registered to go back to school to be a treatment center counselor because that's what you do when you get sober. That certainly wasn't going to come to fruition. And now I'm back in that exact same spot I was at the night I said that prayer. My mom's paying the rent for me. I'm drinking. I'm stealing bottles of liquor from this liquor store I lived behind, and that was my life. And late November of 2004, I was sitting there drinking a stolen bottle of liquor, and a friend of mine came over to check up on me. And if she hadn't, somebody else would be up here talking to me tonight. But she came over to see how I was doing, and she said, "You look terrible. Would you let me take you to detox?" And I said, "I'll let you take me to detox after I finish this bottle." And so I finished that bottle, and I said, "All right, I'll go, but I want you to get me one more bottle first." And in Aberdeen, similarly to Sioux Falls, I suppose, we have drive-through liquor stores, which is incredibly convenient. So she took me through this drive-through liquor store, and she bought me a pint of rum. And I took that bottle, and I twisted off the top, and I choked it back, and that's my last conscious memory for a while. My next conscious memory was coming to a couple days later, tied down to a bed with tubes coming out of my face. And when they pulled the tubes out, I said, "What happened?" Because you want to know that when you wake up in those circumstances. And they said, "Well, you came in here with a blood alcohol level of 0.49, you quit breathing. We had to pump your stomach. We had to put some kind of paralytic thing in you to stop your body from metabolizing the alcohol so that you wouldn't die. And if you'd have been brought in a half hour later, you'd be dead." And I said, "Oh." And that was enough to get my attention. One thing, whenever I tell that story lately, I've been making sure to note. So I'm a parent now. I've been blessed with a little girl. She's 2 years old. And for the longest time, even that moment, I knew that I hurt other people in my recovery, but for the longest time, I just couldn't really grasp the gravity of that situation and how I'd hurt others with me nearly killing myself with alcohol. But, my mom and I had a conversation a few years after that happened, and she told me how the doctors came to her. I was 22 years old at this point. I was an adult. I was in a position to sign off for my own medical needs, but I was incapacitated. I was out. My blood alcohol level was 0.49 and climbing. And so they came to her and they said, if we don't do this for him, if we don't give him this, whatever it was, his body's going to continue to metabolize the alcohol and he's going to die. But us giving this to him could kill him too. So we're going to need you to sign this waiver saying that it's okay for us to give it to him, even though that might be the thing that kills him. And now being a parent, I cannot imagine being put in that position with my daughter. I just cannot imagine being put in that position with my daughter where no matter what the decision I make, it could be the wrong one, But for the longest time, I would have told you, no, I was only hurting myself at that point. So I won't speak for you guys. I don't understand the gravity of the destruction that I caused. I don't know who I hurt, and I don't know how deeply. All I can tell you is I cannot even imagine having to be in that position with my daughter, but it would break my heart. It would absolutely break my heart, and it would terrify me to my core. But then I still had the audacity after all that to yell at my mom when she would call me to say, "Why do you need to borrow $20?" Like I couldn't get her. I couldn't believe that she wouldn't trust me. You know what I mean? Couldn't believe that she wouldn't trust me. So anyway, I obviously didn't die. If you're this far along with me in my story, you're probably thinking, well, we kind of wish you had because you're boring. But if you do that to yourself in the state of South Dakota, they'll take control of your life for a period of time. At least they did with mine. So they sent me to jail first because they didn't want to keep me in detox because they were afraid I would leave. From there, they sent me to jail and they kept me in jail, and they sent me to treatment one more time. And after treatment, they sent me to the Glory House here in Sioux Falls. And in the Glory House, I learned a couple things about myself. Namely that I didn't like living in halfway houses. And I got out after a few months, and I started going to a couple meetings, got an apartment here in Sioux Falls on the east side of town. The apartment had a dishwasher, which, if nothing else, proved that I'd made it in life. And I was good, and I was back doing kind of things my way. I had a job, I was making a little bit of money, and so I was going to meetings. I had a sponsor. I wasn't doing what he asked me to do. I wasn't working the 12 steps, and 8 months to the day of me being dead in that hospital, I got drunk again. And in a room full of alcoholics, you tell that story and they're just like, yeah, it makes sense, So sometimes I have to qualify with if I substitute booze for an outlet, right? So if I go over here and stick my finger in an outlet, blows me across the room, I come to a couple days later, tied down to a bed, and tubes coming out of my face, and they yank them out, and I say, what happened? And they say, well, you were at the treasure map meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous the other night, and for some reason you thought it'd be a good idea to go stick your finger in an outlet and bleed across the room, almost killed you. If you'd have been brought in a half hour later, you'd be dead. I don't think that 8 months later I'd be coming back to this meeting, going running for that same outlet, saying this time it's going to be different. You know what I mean? And if I did, and if you were all here to witness that, your first thought would probably be, why'd you invite him back? But what would kick in right behind it would be, is this guy crazy? Like, what's wrong with him? Like, it literally killed him 8 months ago, and there he is running back for it, right? So you substitute the outlet for alcohol, and I have no problem doing that. So I go running back to drinking, and for some reason, that summer of 2005, every time I drank, I was just kind of flooded with these feelings of like, this is not sane behavior. I obviously was struggling with step one, but I also had a hard time with step two. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I didn't think I was nuts. I thought insanity meant that I had to be like stark raving crazy, like hearing voices or talking to myself or something like that, which really, when you start thinking about the third person dialogue that goes on in my head, and if you knew the amount of like hours that I spend actually talking to myself, you'd be like, yeah, you might qualify for it. But sanity really, for me, started to look like this. I started looking at it saying, no sane and rational person would do that. No person would go running back to that same outlet. Most people wouldn't stick their finger in the outlet in the first place, but they certainly wouldn't go running back to it 8 months later. So I spent the whole summer of 2005 trying to reconcile in my head that what I was doing was sane behavior and I couldn't do it. Just wasn't sane. No matter how much I drank, I couldn't get there. Like, I could not, in my head, get to a point where I was like, this is normal, sane, rational behavior. And, my last drunk really wasn't much. It really wasn't much for all of the crazy times. It probably should have been my last drunk. My last drunk for me was just, I was drinking at a buddy of mine's house. We had some beer and some vodka, and I drank it, and I passed out on his couch. And that next morning, that 25th day of September of 2005, I came to on his couch, and there was just this thought in my head, and it was, you can't drink, and you can't stop, and you're going to die. And I'd probably known all those things before, but for some reason, that knowledge in my head that morning scared me enough to say it's time for me to start doing something different. And so I made a decision. that I was going to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I also made a phone call. I called a friend of mine who at the time had 14 years of sobriety, and he's got 28 now. And so it was cool. This year he and I got to go have lunch a week after my sobriety date, because when he picked me up that day and drove me around, one of the things I asked him, I said, well, how do I be like you? How do I get 14 years of sobriety? And he said, well, why don't you start by going to meetings and not drinking? But so we got to have lunch this year, and I got to tell him, like, I did what you suggested. I went to meetings and didn't drink, and here we are 14 years later. So I did a lot of other things in between too, like get a sponsor and work 12 steps. I don't want to discount any of that. So, but I made a decision. that I was going to come back to Alcoholics Anonymous and that I was going to do what they asked me. And the second night, I actually went back to my first meeting, and my dad happened to be in town. He was living in Aberdeen at the time, and my dad and I had a pretty contentious relationship. That's probably the best way to put it. And most of that was my fault. I've been sober long enough now to be able to tell you that, in spite of any case that I can make up here as to why it was hard for on his part, really, at the end of the day, I had more years of being an adult with him being a kid. And so any damage that he may have caused when I was a kid, I held on to for far too long. But one of my biggest arguments with my father was he wasn't there when I needed him the most. I was gone when I was a kid, and he wasn't there when I needed him the most. But he did happen to be in town the 26th day of September of 2005, which was the first night I went back to a meeting. And he was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He passed away 4 years ago with 13 years of sobriety. And he happened to be in town, and he took me back to my first meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous. So while my little dramatic ranting is that he wasn't there when I needed him the most, the real story is the night that I went back to my first meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous, it was my dad that took me. So yeah. So I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous with a resolution to do what you asked me to do. And after a few meetings, I was sitting in a room at Southside, and a gentleman sat me down and told me that he was going to be my sponsor. And he had a strong personality, and he had a loud voice, and that's exactly what I needed when I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous. He sat me down and he told me some things that I would do. He told me that I would have a home group. He told me that I would show up there an hour early, that I would stay an hour after. He said, we go to Frying Pan after this, and you're going to come with. He said, when you go to other meetings, show up early, walk around the room, shake people's hands, ask them how they're doing. He taught me how to have service commitments. He taught me how to get myself into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. He told me that it's pretty hard to drink when you're in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. But the most important thing that he did, and I think the most important thing we do as sponsors, is that he sat me down and he took me through this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he showed me how to work the 12 steps. I already told you that I spent an awful lot of time committing a lot of this to memory. Committing it to memory did nothing. Did absolutely nothing for me. I could quote large passages of the big book, and I could quote them drunk. I proved that. Sitting down with a sponsor who'd done the work before me, having him take me through this book and show me that it's not just something to be read or analyzed, it's a textbook where there's actions found in it. If you take them, will dispel the necessity for a guy like you to drink alcohol, Jeremy. Just give it a try. And so he took me through that, and he showed me how to do that. And somewhere along the way of doing that stuff, the desire to drink alcohol left. It just left. I don't know how else to describe it. If you're new and you still have that desire to drink alcohol, and if you're an alcoholic in my type, and you're willing to get a sponsor, and you're willing to do this stuff, I can promise you this. If you're an alcoholic like I am, and if you're willing to do the work that I did, that recession will just go away. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. Our book promises that. It says we'll recoil from it as if like tempted by a hot flame. And that's really my experience anymore. Today, as a result of doing these things, the desire to drink alcohol is left. I'm just not interested in it. And then he just kind of took his time. He and a lot of other individuals who took their time as well. They took their time to just kind of show me how to grow up. I moved down here when I was 22. I sobered up when I was 23. And of course, if you had asked me back then, I told you, no, I'm a pretty responsible, self-respecting man, but my mom was still paying my rent. She was still paying for my cell phone. I had a fairly large credit card bill that I racked up that she was still making the minimum payment on. And I had no sense of responsibility, and he sat me down and he showed me how to become a responsible, tax-paying member of society. He and a lot of other guys. We've had, I forgot to mention at the beginning, my home group is the Glacial Lake Sunday night speaker meeting in Watertown, South Dakota. We meet Sunday nights at 6:30, an open speaker meeting similar to your meeting. But the reason I bring that up is because we've lately been having an awful lot of guys who were there when I got sober, coming up from Sioux Falls to give their talks. And it's a good reminder for me of these men who showed me how to be a man. They showed me how to be a man. And so I learned how to just kind of grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, the problem with getting sober and staying sober and doing the right things, I suppose, if there is any kind of problem, is that life has a tendency to get better. And that sounds kind of paradoxical, I suppose. But, for a guy like me, when the heat's on, I got a warrant out for my arrest and no money in the bank and all that, like I'm pretty good to deal with, I'm kind of like Grace under pressure, right? But when things are going well, when I got a job or a pretty girl or, a car or a house, that's when it kind of starts to get a little squirrely because I've got this huge ego, right? And so I'll start looking around thinking to myself, like, yeah, I have done pretty well for myself. Like I always knew it. Like I always knew I had it in me, I always knew that I just needed to ignite that potential and all of a sudden everything would become wonderful, And so what I've struggled with for sure in recovery is not giving credit where credit's due. And that for me, credit should be going to God. And instead what I've done is focused much more on patting myself on the back and complimenting my sterling intellect and all this. And like, yeah, I always knew I could do this, and what happens, I think, because I have alcoholism is that's how alcoholism rears its ugly head today, cunning, baffling, and powerful. So my alcoholism today is smart. It always has been. And so it's not going to come at me in the way of saying, Jeremy, go down to the bar and have a drink tonight. Because it knows I'm going to say no, right? But it'll come at me in ways of saying things like, you don't need to, you've been to a meeting already this week, you don't need to go to a second one. You don't need to call your sponsor this week because you already know what he's going to say and you already kind of know what to do. So there's really no sense in keeping it current with him. You don't need to answer the phone when this new guy calls. You don't need to show up at your home at 5:30, and it just it'll keep throwing stuff at me and it'll throw little things at me like that. And pretty soon, if I'm not careful, the stuff that it's going to throw at me, it's going to keep me away from the thing that makes sure that I don't take a drink, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And this ego too, just while it's keeping me away from this thing, it just makes me behave inappropriately. It doesn't matter if I have a drink in my system or not, it just makes me behave inappropriately. And I guess what I mean by that is, I'm just maybe not as good of a husband as I should be if I'm not plugged into the power of God and Alcoholics Anonymous. And it doesn't mean that I'm like staying out till midnight or anything, but maybe that just means I'm not as conversational with my wife as I should be. Maybe I'm not talking about her day as much as I'm talking about mine, or maybe I'm not talking to her at all. Maybe I'm going down in the basement and listening to music when I should be engaging in my family life, or maybe I'm not being as good of a friend as I should be, or maybe I'm not, and so I would not trade anything in my recovery for anything, but I will tell you that for somebody who's had the good fortune of being able to get sober young in Alcoholics Anonymous and stay sober, there are an awful lot of things that I could be doing an awful lot better. There are an awful lot of things I could be doing an awful lot better. And I think the problem for me is that I have this tendency too often to focus on the here and now and the material and thinking to myself, wow, I've really done well for myself. I can rest on my laurels. And our book says to rest on our laurels, which I literally just learned 6 months ago means awards. I didn't know that. I would have told you I knew what laurels meant. I didn't. But if we rest on our accomplishments or achievements, we're headed for trouble. So, so today, my life today is very good. I have a very good life today. I've been very blessed with far more than I deserve and far more than I could have imagined when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have exactly what it talks about in those last couple of pages in the vision for you. I have a host of friends. Most of them are sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. I get to see friends that I've known for 15 years and who are still kind to me, even though they knew me when I was new and crazy, and I get to have relationships with my family back today. Most of those relationships, if not all of them, have been restored. I get to be a dad. I get to just be a dad to my little girl. And my mom tonight, my wife has something going on in Watertown, and I'm obviously here. And so my mom is down in Watertown tonight just watching my daughter, and she just gets to be grandma. She doesn't have to worry about me out there causing chaos. She knows where I'm at tonight. She knows I'm safe. And I sent her the link to the meeting and said, you can listen to this if you want to. Hopefully she's not, just because I don't ever think I do a very good job of talking. But if she is, she knows where I'm at. She knows I'm safe and that I'm okay with you and Alcoholics Anonymous. And that alone, I think, was worth the price of admission. To be able to have my loved ones sleep comfortably at night, I think that's a pretty big deal. So if you're new, I hope you get to find what I found here. And I can almost assure you that you will. The only hard part that I can tell you is that you're going to have to do some work. Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, too often gets kind of misconceived as just this place where I get to go and sit in a meeting and talk about how good or bad my day was. And that's not Alcoholics Anonymous the way I understand it. Alcoholics Anonymous is a program found in the book called Alcoholics Anonymous that, if worked, will dispel the necessity to drink alcohol. And as a result of having that happen in my life, having that spiritual awakening happen in my life, I get to live peacefully and comfortably most of the time with you. So I'm very grateful again for the opportunity to come here tonight. Please pray for us as we traverse the roads back to Watertown. And if you're ever in Watertown on Sunday nights, please come and see us at our meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks to Dennis. Thanks to Jeremy. If you guys could come up here by the table after the meeting's over so people can come and thank you for sharing, that'd be great. And we'll close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Be coming back to work, so we work.
Ended up going to 5 o'clock church last week too, so. I did go.
I didn't.